When Doopy met her boyfriend, she was deeply in love with the girl he was dating at the time. Doopy and the girl had been good friends for a few years, and Doopy ended up falling pretty hard for her but never admitted it. After she started dating her boyfriend, she wanted Doopy to meet him and they ended up becoming good friends. Eventually they broke up and Doopy's crush essentially abandoned her for another boyfriend, never even speaking to her again. Doopy was hurt, but the boy she left was there for her. Eventually they admitted their feelings to each other and they've been together ever since.
Nixium's friend dared him to punch a solid brick wall at school as hard as he possibly could for $20. Nixium took the bed and punched it with full force, not holding back at all. There was a loud crack from his wrist, and his broken wrist bone tore out of his skin. But on the bright side, his friend doubled the amount of the bed, which didn't really make up for the stitches and cast for his arm.
When Sweet Commando was 14 years old, he dreamed that he was an army dude going on a mission. But his mission was a bit unusual. It was to go and rescue a cell phone that had been dropped into a toilet. When he woke up, he found himself asleep on the toilet with his phone dropped in it. This was not one of his better days.
When Gooby was 18, she wanted to save up for a Valentine's gift for her boyfriend, so while at a diner, her best friend came up to her and said, "Hey Gooby, I'll give you $25 if you kiss the next guy who comes in." The next guy who came in the diner was a fat, weird, smelly guy. He had a toy pony from My Little Pony. She can't remember, it was maybe either Pinkie Pie or Rainbow Dash. So when he came in the diner, Gooby immediately kissed him on the cheek. Her friend didn't say whether to kiss him on the lips or the cheek, but she said you have to go back and kiss him on the lips. It was so gross. He needed like a whole pack of Tic Tacs. Gooby would do anything for her boyfriend, but for any other reason? Hell to the no.
A few years ago, Civil Spider wanted to call his ex-girlfriend who lived in another state, so he decided to do it. The person on the other end picked up, and before they answered, Civil Spider said, "I love you so much, and I also miss you so much. I wish I could see you." And then a male voice on the other end said, "Who the hell is this?" Civil Spider recognized the voice. It was his ex-girlfriend's dad. He apologized and the father gave him the right number. During lunchtime in Pandora's junior year of high school, she was sent to the nurse's office for coughing a little too much. While walking there, she saw a group of 3 well-known delinquents stripping to their undergarments. They then proceeded to hop over the fence to the front of the school, only to meet some guy in a Toyota dressed in a panda costume. Pandora could only wonder what was going on in their minds.
When I was 7 years old, a few friends of mine were getting bullied. This boy used to steal their lunches. When I heard about him, he seemed kinda scary and intimidating, and everyone used to talk about him. I didn't have as many friends as I'd like to back then, so I thought I would take justice into my own hands. During recess one day, I followed him around, trying to figure out how he spent his time. I noticed he was sitting down with a girl. It seemed like he liked her. It was fall, so I grabbed a bunch of leaves off the ground, ran up to him, and threw them on his head right before they were about to kiss. The girl started laughing, and the guy was really upset. I told him to leave my friends alone, and he looked furious. But because the girl was laughing and sitting beside him, he didn't have the balls to do anything about it. Since then, I became a bit more popular, and I brought justice into my own hands.
When Sid was 4 or 5, he took some peanut butter out of the cabinet and started to rub it on his feet. As his dog would lick it off every time, Sid thought it was hilarious, but his mom didn't see the funny side. She came out of her room and said, "If you do this one more time, I'm gonna take away all of your toys." Sid never did it again. Or did he? Dolan was about 7 years old. He was in the garage at his grandma's house and found some dolls. Dolan was rather curious because he never played with dolls before. Everything was normal until he decided to take off their clothes. He then chopped the dolls into pieces and accidentally cut himself. Dolan's grandma then walked in to see if he was alright. When Dolan turned around, he was covered in blood, crying his eyes out with a naked broken doll in his hands and pieces of other dolls everywhere else. Due to all the embarrassment, he also made a mess downstairs. Dolan passed out after that, either from blood loss or embarrassment. His grandma always changes the subject when he brings up that incident.
Sidious had to stay with his uncle once, who occasionally likes to have a drink. So that night, when he got drunk, he went outside to have a cigarette. A Apart from being slightly louder than usual, his uncle was being well behaved until suddenly he stripped all of his clothes off and ran into the street. He started humping the nearest street pole and making loud erotic noises. His neighbor yelled out for his uncle to stop smoking, but somehow luckily failed to notice that he was naked and grinding a pole. Sidious demanded he come back inside, where he passed out. He was so drunk that he had no memory of it the next day.
Ghost Toast was in 5th grade, and at the time, the happy dance was everywhere. Nobody in the school liked it except for some of the girls. One day, on their annual Friday assembly, the principal announced that they had exceeded a fundraiser goal by 375%. Because of this, about 5 moms ran to the front of the school. Ghost Toast was suddenly paralyzed. 4 of the moms nobody knew, but his mom, who helped in the art room, ran up to the front with them. The music played, and she started dancing the happy dance. And it was terrible. The other kids were laughing, whispering, jeering. Ghost Toast was in shock. After that assembly, he was picked on for the rest of the year.
Gooby's sisters aren't competitive about much with each other, but there was one weird thing they competed over every day. Whenever they were done eating dinner, they would race each other to the bathroom to wash their hands. The one who lost would get legitimately upset that she got beat to the bathroom. It was strange, but a pretty regular thing for a while.
Doopy was sitting in her living room when she decided it was time to go to sleep. All of a sudden, a dark figure appeared crawling across the floor. She assumed it was her sister trying to scare her, but then the figure stood up into the shape of a twisted man standing over her. It made the weirdest screeching sound she'd ever heard. She got down on all fours and ran out of the room. She hid under her covers and waited until morning. She never found out what it was, but she doesn't sit in the living room by herself anymore.
One time, when Sid had finished school for the day, he walked to his bus stop to catch the bus. While he waited, he saw a man on the other side of the street. After standing there for a few minutes, the man put his hands on the ground and slowly did a handstand. Then he started to do the splits while still doing the handstand. He continued to do more acrobatic tricks for about 10 minutes when a person who was catching the same bus as Sid yelled out to him and told him he was really good. The man ended up falling due to having been distracted. At that moment, Sid's bus came and he got on. Before the bus left, the man jumped onto the back of a stranger and started riding him like a horse, yelling, "To Narnia!" Sid never saw him again.
There was a girl Zaragamba liked when he was in 4th grade. One day he decided that he was finally gonna tell her how he really felt about her. When he walked up to her, instead of asking, "Want to go on a road trip in an RV and maybe go somewhere alone?" he accidentally asked, "Want to ride on my big dick and go somewhere alone?" They stood there in silence, but then started laughing their asses off when Zaragamba explained what he meant to say. She ended up going on the road trip with him anyways.
One day, Sweet Commander was visiting his family. While he was out, his housemate sent him a text saying she was having a date over. 4 hours later, he sent her a text telling her he was on his way home, but she never messaged back. When he got back to his house, he opened the door to find his housemate and her date were completely naked, having coitus in the middle of the living room. The room stunk of marijuana, and their eyes were bright red. He immediately went back out and then spent the night at a friend's house. They never mentioned the incident again.
Lady Bot's weirdest secret was that when she was 7 years old, she would eat crayons because she thought it would turn her shit into rainbows. She would buy every color and eat it. Then when she had to poop, she would run to the toilet and do her business. She was very disappointed to learn that her poop was plain old brown and gave up on the idea. That is, until she had the brilliant idea to make her poop smell better, which she did by eating scented candles. She admits that neither worked, but at least she knows crayons taste better than candles.
Spinal Palm's secret is he will eat anything. I mean, anything. People ask him to eat something and he'll do it. He's eaten rocks, marbles, magnets, sticks, a spider, 4-week-old milk, even a person's ashes. Yes, human remains. A kid brought some of their grandma's ashes to his house once and they asked Spinal Palm to eat her, which he did without hesitation. He figures you can't say you don't like something if you haven't tried it, even if it is the corpse of a relative of one of your friends.
One time when Ladybot was young, she came very close to death. She thought it would be a great idea to jump off the roof of her house and onto a trampoline. For a few short seconds, she thought she was actually flying. But then, she very quickly fell over her neighbor's fence and landed in their backyard with a broken leg. Ouch.
Weirdest thing I've ever seen on a train was when I was about 5 years old, and I was in New York, Brooklyn. You usually take the subway because it's the easiest and cheapest form of transportation around. Because, well, everybody can't really drive because there's so much cars and it's just so much bad traffic. So there was an old guy in a train, and he was looking kind of suspicious. He would look around, left, right, just glance here and there, looking at people, especially when they stood up from their chair. So right when we're about to leave, I looked back and I saw him just sniffing chairs. I actually saw a chair sniffer. This guy would just sniff the chairs and he would be like, chairs, booty residue. He made such a big deal about it, it was almost as if he found his own natural high. Sniffing booty residue. A weird fellow indeed. A true chair sniffer.
When Ladybot worked for a very small local internet provider, she often helped set up email for people, usually older folks. One day, a couple came and sat down at her desk, a man in his 80s and his wife who was maybe in her late 40s. The man was there to set up a new email. His first demand was that he wanted his email address to only be 2 characters long before the domain. Ladybot told him that that was fine, but the username had to be at least 3 characters. The old man started throwing a fit. His child bride wife then started screaming at him.
Honey, you're still getting the email you want!
He responded, "Will you shut the hell up, Juan? I told you to stay in the car!" Finally, the wife won and they moved on to the password. His wife started again.
If you want the email, you have to give the lady a password.
By this stage, the entire office could hear the couple swearing at each other. Eventually, they came up with a password and wrote it down so he'd remember. His wife took it and put it in her checkbook. "How am I supposed to remember the password if you take it from me?" When they finally left, Ladybot's coworkers started spraying air freshener everywhere. Because of her fan, Ladybot hadn't noticed the man's scent. It smelled like old man cologne in a colostomy bag.
Doopy had a dream as a teenager where she was playing a Nintendo Dogs-esque pet simulator on a Game Boy Advance. Doopy's pet was a little brown dog. His health meter went down every second. Doopy didn't know how to play, and there were only 3 or 4 hearts on the screen, so she didn't know what she needed to do to get his health back up. When his health ran out, the screen flashed red before fading into a fuzzy image of the Grim Reaper holding the dog's disembodied head. Years later, Doopy found out about a game called Ken Your Pet. In it, you take care of a baby chick. Just like in her dream, the food and water bars drop quickly. And clicking on the bike seems like it would give the chick exercise, but it actually turns out to be a grinder and kills the chick. Then you're forced to look at a series of pictures of miserable or cooking chickens as the credits scroll. The game reminded her of her dream from years earlier about a simplistic pet simulator with meters that go down too fast, a lack of instructions, and a bloody death sequence to make the player feel guilty for unintentionally letting their pet die.
The worst teacher I ever had was 5th grade Miss Robinson. She was a terrible teacher and a terrible person at giving advice. She always picked at me for any little thing I did, whether it was wrong or right. It came to my knowledge that she was just a very selfish, arrogant individual who actually treated others much better than she treated me. So one day, Miss Robinson went missing, and people asked, "Oh, where is Miss Robinson? Where is Miss Robinson?" And I knew from the very beginning that Miss Robinson wasn't ever gonna come back to class.
Salty Squid went to his friend's house and made the mistake of opening the freezer. There he found his friend's dead goldfish, wrapped in tinfoil. His friend explained that when the fish died, it was winter, and the ground was too hard to dig up and bury him properly. That explanation would have made sense, except the fish died 7 years ago. When Salty Squid asked his friend why he wouldn't just flush it, he said he could never do something so cruel to his best friend.
One day, Dolan was home alone and playing Team Fortress 2. Hours passed by and he opened the window because he needed fresh air. Suddenly, he saw a cute little girl in a dress. She looked 5 years old, but he couldn't see her parents. Then she pulled out a box with something written on it. She pulled out a 6-inch dildo and began hitting the ground with it. Dolan started laughing and wanted to record it, but didn't because his batteries were dead. After that, she went home. He still sees her when he's outside and still laughs about it to this day. Helbin and his brother own the cutest little pet hamster. Its favorite food is sunflower seeds, and Helbin's brother loves to feed her and play with her. One day Helbin was walking past when he saw his brother standing in front of the hamster cage. What Helbin saw made him do a double take. His brother was putting sunflower seeds on his tongue and was trying to get the hamster to take them out of his mouth. It kinda looked like they were kissing. Helbin told his brother this was weird, but he still does it all the time.
Kyle M's school once had a big kickball tournament. While he was playing, a bully pulled down Kyle M's pants. He stood there while everybody stared and laughed at him. He pulled his pants up and didn't go to school for 3 days. When he went back, kids made fun of him. One day, while he was in a stall going to the bathroom, a bunch of kids ran inside and dumped a large bucket of piss on him. He believes those were the worst things bullies ever did to him.
The worst customer Helbin ever served was a guy who walked into the grocery store and immediately started to piss and shit everywhere. When anyone tried to stop the customer, he would beat them up. He took off all of his clothes and walked around like nothing was wrong. Helbin approached the customer and said,
Dude, you need to put some clothes on right now.
But instead of putting his clothes back on, he covered himself in snacks that were in the aisles. Helbin walked up to him and grabbed the crazy guy in a headlock before throwing him out. Luckily, he never returned to that supermarket ever again.
When Tolop was 10, his mom wanted him to get some milk from the store. So he got on the train and sat down on one of the seats. During the ride, a guy suddenly stood up and started to strip off his clothes. Once he was completely naked, he began to dance on the pole in the middle of the train. When the train reached a stop, the cops took him away. Tolop decided to walk from then on.
One day, Froggy and her mother got home from grocery shopping. They let the dog out while they carried the groceries inside. Their dog, like always, barked. The woman who lived next door to them heard the dog and went up to them. Obviously drunk, she asked,
Hey, I know this is gonna sound weird, but can I play with your dog?
Froggy's mom decided to let her inside. When the woman walked in, she saw a large aquarium in the living room that housed Froggy's pet lizard. Upon seeing the lizard, the woman decided to play with it. While the woman played with the lizard, and then once they let him inside, she said,
I was just bored at home and drank some vodka, and then I heard your dog, and I just wanted to play with some animals.
After playing with their pets for around 20 minutes, the woman pulled out her cell phone and called her husband saying,
Hey, come next door, they got this really cool lizard.
A few minutes later, he showed up and he was pissed. He apologized to Froggy and her mom if his wife bothered them before taking her home. He chastised her for being drunk and wandering around the neighborhood.
Hello, oh god, I've dealt with some gross stuff, but this one really takes the cake. So one day I was over at a friend's house and he offered me something to drink, right? No biggie, super nice of him I thought. He gave me a cup of soda that he poured in. Then I looked at the drink. Easily, this soda had been out for months. Years, even. I just looked back at him and smiled. I didn't want to hurt the guy's feelings. I don't know, I'm kinda weird. So I drank a little. It was like syrup. I could barely get it down. After drinking the whole thing, hanging out, and leaving his house, I was sick for about a week. I then found out that he just grabbed a can from his grandfather's study. It went bad way back in the early 70s, and the cap was slightly open, so god, who knows what was in it. It gives me chills thinking about it. It doesn't seem that bad compared to these other stories, but man, soda should not have the consistency of sludge.
After high school, Time Wanderer worked at a supermarket. One day, an old woman brought 6 cans of soup to the register. She handed him a coupon for the soup, which was buy 2, get 1 free. When he scanned the coupon, it was rejected. The old woman said that she had just clipped it out of the newspaper and that it had to be a problem with the machine, even though the coupon was from 3 months before. Time Wanderer took out his phone and showed her the date compared to the coupon, but the old woman told him that his phone was wrong and that it couldn't know the date she cut out the coupon. Then it dawned on him. She believed that the date the coupon was clipped from the paper was what mattered. She stormed out of the store saying she would never be back, but she showed up a week later. Pandora's family was on vacation and the elevators at their hotel were really weird. Neither Pandora nor her mum knew how to get it to work. They continued to try until an incredibly hot guy walked up behind Pandora and showed her how to do it. As the three of them were standing in the silent elevator, Pandora's mum said to her,
Pandora, you really need to start wearing better bras.
The hot guy looked at Pandora's mum and then at Pandora's boobs. Finally, their stop arrived and Pandora's mum got an earful for the rest of the night.
Spinal Palm, who has a cerebral palsy that only affects him physically, was with his mom one day when a woman walked up to him. At first, she didn't seem weird until she began to treat him like a baby. When the woman noticed a Despicable Me poster behind him, she asked, "Can you say despicable?" Spinal Palm repeated the word, saying it normally like he usually would. Then he said,
"Yeah, I'm taking my mom to see it for her birthday."
The woman turned to his mom, not knowing that it was in fact his mom. In the same tone, the woman said, "Ah, did you hear that? He's taking his mom to see it for her birthday." His mom told the woman that she was his mom. The woman was shocked by the revelation.
Ghost Toast was 7 or 8. He had new neighbors move in near him, but he never really met them. One day, while walking down the sidewalk to his friend's house, Ghost Toast tripped and a man walked over as he got up. The man said, "I like your underwear. Can I have them?" Little Ghost Toast said no and ran back over to his dad's house, where his stepmom was luckily on the front porch. Ghost Toast found out about a year later that guy was a pedophile and was arrested. Back in the early 2000s, Spinal Palm bought his first camera phone. Since camera phones and texting were fairly new at the time, Spinal Palm decided the best thing to do with his new toy was to stick it down his pants, snap a photo of his junk, and then text it to his friend who was sitting just a few feet away. Unfortunately, he sent it to the wrong contact. It went to probably the worst person possible, his psychiatrist. She cracked jokes about it every time he went in for an appointment. He was so embarrassed that he ended up changing psychiatrists.
While growing up in Arizona, Gergak and his friend Sid were always interested in collecting gemstones. So they would go to nearby ravines to look around and have a good time. One day, while they were going up a ravine near their apartments, Gergak and Sid came across a drain pipe that was roughly 3 meters wide. Of course, they decided it would be an excellent spot to go find gold and quartz gemstones. As they made their way down there, they saw a small clearing with very high grass. It was summer, so they were unsure if there would be rattlesnakes, Gila monsters, or other desert critters that would be in their way. As they walked to the drain pipe, Gergak and Sid heard some rustling in a nearby bush and were struck with fear, unsure what was nearby. Within seconds of hearing that noise, they saw whatever it was pushing the grass down as it approached. They knew it was only a matter of time before it was on top of them, so Gergak and Sid bolted as fast as they could into the drain pipe and out of the other end. What was scary wasn't so much what was in that field of grass, but rather when they finally got to the end of the tunnel, they kept hearing the noise of multiple people yelling and screaming in a ghastly manner. When they made it to the other end, Gergak and Sid saw that the drain pipe led them about half a kilometer away from their complex. When they turned around to see if anything was following them, they saw a dark shadow sitting at the entrance of the tunnel before a gust of wind picked it up and blew it away.
Tulip's most annoying habit is to unwind by walking back and forth in his room while playing music through his headphones. Nobody ever really cares except for one time when he was doing his thing, and all of a sudden his grandmother came into his room and said,
"Do you have any idea how loud that is?"
Tulip said that he didn't, and his grandmother stomped on the ground very loudly and said,
"That is all I hear."
She walked away, and Tulip is terrified to even try to unwind whenever he goes over to his grandparents' house. When he needs to unwind now, he's just sure that he doesn't make a sound.